Hello and welcome to another edition of Prodigy Search Presents. I'm Mark Resch Jr., partner at Prodigy Search. Today I'm excited to welcome a dear friend of mine to the conversation, Leonard Bonacci. Leonard, thank you for being with us and taking the time.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it. I want to start out by saying that your backdrop is much more impressive than mine. I may have to switch to like the moon or something.
This took time to construct, believe me. But hey, I'll have Leonard jump in and talk about his background and his current role, mostly about his current role and what he's tasked with day to day. But by way of brief background, Leonard is the Regional Vice President, Stadiums and Arenas for ASM Global. He's been there for about 6 years now. I think started off in a consulting capacity before being elevated and kind of rising through the ranks there into a very prominent position within the organization. And prior to that, spent nearly 16 years with the Eagles. I mean, I think that seems like a lifetime ago, but what a great run. And was most recently serving as Vice President of Event Operations and Event Services. And Leonard and I first met at the Eagles when he was a big wig. I was a low man on the totem pole. So I am honored to speak with him today. And as I said at the outset, I'd love to have you, Leonard, talk about what people know about your organization, and we'll talk about the merger, but talk about your day-to-day. Talk about what you're primarily responsible for as Regional Vice President.
First, thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's always good to reconnect. And if one thing out of this whole pandemic, the whole use of video chatting has been great. And I feel even more connected than a typical phone call. So thank you again for the opportunity. My role as Regional Vice President is really to make sure the properties that we manage, ASM Global is obviously a facility manager of stadiums, arenas, theaters, and convention centers around the world. And they divvy those up. And given my experience, as you mentioned, is in primarily stadiums and pro sports, that's been the carve out for me within our account group. I primarily work with our NFL stadium portfolio. And we have 2 NBA basketball teams as well. So I'm there to make sure the general managers of those facilities have what they need to be successful, as well as maintain a client relationship to ensure that we're able to manage those buildings together for a long time.
One of the things I'm fascinated by, given how you just described your role and the types of venues that you oversee, doing your job, and you talk about video, right? So doing a job like yours via phone and video rather than what in theory has a lot of hands-on elements, seeing what's going on, meeting the people, seeing the GMs, the VPs of operations, the other key constituents and stakeholders at the client, at the venue. And listen, your personality, much like mine, you're an in-person type of guy, right? It's not always, I'll shoot you an email, I'll shoot you a text. I'd rather talk to you over the phone and meet in person for a coffee to talk about X, Y, or Z. But you can't go to the stadiums. You can't go to the arenas, the convention centers right now. How is that? I mean, how has that changed kind of the way you do that? I mean, are you having success doing that and adapting to flying all over the world, meeting, especially all over the country, meeting with the venue operators?
Yeah, so it definitely presents a challenge. I enjoy jumping on an airplane and going to meet with our clients out in the field. There's nothing better than kind of walking the stadium on event day. To me, that's probably why we do what we do. Yeah. Watching people kind of come together and enjoy themselves. I am much more comfortable in being there and hands-on and shaking hands, slapping backs, and walking around just getting to know each other. So you do have a challenge there when you have to do everything on the phone or on video. One part of my experience prior to coming to the Philadelphia Eagles was in radio. So I have to say that training has come in handy here in the past couple of weeks. It's important to communicate as much as you can. Obviously, you lose the nonverbal. You pick it up now in this video component.
Sure.
You want to make sure you're picking up the cadence of your communication with your staff and your clients. And it does present a different challenge, but boy, it's a lot of fun to go to different markets, meet different folks, and help with those unique challenges that are there.
And you talked about one of the things that you really like about the job is when you're going to those markets, you're right, walking the concourse or sitting up high and being able to take it all in with the key operators and take it all in and being there. One part of that is with fans, right? So clearly there's 2 conversations going on right now, which is, when or if things get restarted, first and foremost, without fans in attendance, whether that's golf or football. I mean, whatever you pick, every single sport is saying we're going to do this, and probably without fans. what does that mean to you? How do you feel about that notion of these stadiums and arenas being empty?
Look, since the dawn of time, humans have congregated. And, I always tell people when they say, really, what business are you in? And, when we were with the Eagles, it was easy. We're in the football business, right? Now I've started to say to people, we're in the business of helping people forget about life for a while. And, you come together in these stadiums, arenas, theaters, and you get to relax and reconnect and just kind of enjoy yourself. And that's been taken away, and you start to recognize the value even more. I think it's important, Mark, that, there's this talk of getting things on TV. I applaud the NFL and their leadership for going ahead with the draft. I'm a news junkie like probably you are, and I read a lot of both sides. Should they? Shouldn't they? How insensitive is it? Whatever. I got to tell you, just my opinion. Obviously, a lot of people have others, but I applaud them. It helped me forget about life for a while.
Yeah, same here.
And it was great to see some of our former colleagues watch their kids. We saw Mr. Runyon's son drafted by the Packers. That was a lot of fun. I remember him walking around training camp as a kid. And man, you want to feel old.
Now he's a pro football player.
So there's a lot of stories there. And I thought all the networks, kudos to them, kudos to the league and the leadership. It was a brave move. But anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I think they do need to get things back on television. Let's at least start back. We'll obviously do it with the guidance of the experts in the medical field, but let's at least get it on TV and get some people to watch some things other than statistics scrolling on a screen
Sure.
of, related to the pandemic. I'd rather see the statistics on the running back on fourth down.
Yeah. When one of the things, and again, respecting confidentiality or that things are still in play and you're still working through these things with each of your, again, the people at headquarters, but also at the facilities that you're responsible for. So that's part one is fans not going to be there. So let's say whatever that is, 3, 6, 9 months from now, I'm not sure, but when fans are allowed back, can you talk about, again, even if it's in generic terms or what you've read and what you're planning on,
Mm-hmm.
what do we do when fans do get back? How do we, as venue operators, I mean, what do you do? What do the people that you're managing, how do they run an event? How do they run a game, a concert, a show, when fans are allowed back? What do you think is going to happen? What's the strategy that's going to be employed?
So I feel like I'm using this example a lot lately. I just used it a few minutes ago. I feel like we're all, and I mean all, not just sports and entertainment. I just mean any place where people gather, whether it be a grocery store, a hotel, an airline, or sports and entertainment, or Las Vegas. We're flying this plane as we're building it, right? We're all trying to figure it out with the help of some terrific medical minds. The short answer is I don't know what it looks like. I do think that there'll be an initial reaction and measures that will be put in place, and I think those will evolve over time. I think the closest one I could probably point to was we were at Veterans Stadium at the time when 9/11 happened. And right after, there were a number of things put into place, and those measures evolved over time.
Mm-hmm.
Some got more and more, I don't know if the word strict is the right word, but, they got more involved, more detailed, and some relaxed, some went away.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we'll probably, with the help of our medical folks, come up with some practices to put in place to keep people safe. I think if you walk into any local grocery store, I know the ones out here have done a great job. There's people in their hand sanitizing stations everywhere. There's people wiping things down. It's very much in front of you of what's going on. I'm sure at night, when they close it down, they're cleaning, restocking, doing those things. So I think I'm taking my cues from folks like that and watching what they're doing. There are a lot of papers being put out by some really smart folks about how they see the future going. But I think it's going to be things like that, hand sanitizing stations. How do we deal with food? How do you deal with the distribution of food? How do you deal with, what we're calling the customer journey, right? When they get out of the car, how do we do security screening? How do we do this 6-foot barrier? How do we lay it out differently? You know, Mark, there's probably a lot more questions out there. And what I like about that is there's a lot of conversation around those questions. Yeah. Frankly, all the leagues are having these conversations. So I think through that dialogue, you probably will see some things. But I guess the greater point is we'll probably have a number of measures in place to get people in. And who knows if that's a percentage of the building, all of the building, or somewhere in between. You're probably going to see some measures in place in the beginning. There'll be some, execution errors or elongated waits times or anything like that, just as we saw after 9/11. Sure. But I think the industry, if not the country, if not the world, will evolve and we'll make changes, and technology will help. Technology will play a huge part in this. And I think you'll see some changes because I think the overriding spirit is we want to come together. We want to celebrate our teams. We want to forget about life for a while and enjoy ourselves and come together as a community, sports community, what have you. I think you're going to see that, but with some measures in place.
It's interesting, and just as a sidebar, I mean, I think the one comment you made, among others, that I took away from that, and you're right. It's not a singular event in one city or something. It's not and we'll get to this later when we talk about some events or some things you might have experienced in Philly, but because it includes everybody. I mean, the league should be talking to each other. The teams should talk to each other, and everybody will come up with some sort of best practice. Won't be able to implement everything, but this isn't just, oh, well, that's a St. Louis issue. They'll take care. That's a New York issue. That's a Florida. I mean, this is everybody in every sport going to say, yeah, here's what we think will work best. We're going to try, to your point, some of the food and beverage, security. Here are the measures we're going to take in all these areas. And you can maybe cherry pick, based on what the organization feels is best. To that point about brainstorming, by way of transition, I looking at the shirt, and I mentioned at the beginning, the merger, we talked about, and you mentioned it as well. I believe initially first announced February of 2019, then it was completed October, in the merger between AEG Facilities and SMG, finally coming together, coming to fruition and being finalized. What's changed since then? And maybe to the positive, right? I mean, and what do you foresee changing as a result of that merger into the future?
I'll tell you, it's exciting. You look at the two companies, SMG and AEG Facilities, two of the industry leaders, to be able to come together. You're taking, in my view, the global expertise of two very large facility companies and putting them together. The widening of the experience base, the widening of the network, the opportunities for employees, the benefit to all of our stakeholders, the expansion of knowledge and experience and opportunity. It really is amazing to watch. The only unfortunate part is the thing started going up and then this hit. So, but what I am seeing though, Mark, on that point of network and knowledge base enhancement, you're seeing that right now. We're on calls constantly, trying to get ready for the reopening of the world, if you will. And the folks on the phone, the knowledge being shared on the phone. Sure. The excitement from leadership, by the way. When I say excitement, meaning probably a better phrase is positive energy from our CEO on down. Sure. Is refreshing. I just, I'm not expecting everybody to agree with me, but I just don't subscribe to the whole, the world is over, life is changing, we'll never be the same again. Like all that dialogue, while that may be true, I just don't think it's helpful. I think the dialogue I've experienced from our leadership has been nothing short of amazing. It's always been, hey, what are you doing in Asia? What are you doing in Australia? What are you doing in Europe? You haven't been able to have those conversations until ASM Global happened. So now we're able to pick from the very best, some of the brightest minds in the business I have an opportunity to work with. And we're able to just, we have labs all over the world, right? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And when you manage, 300 facilities now in the new company, I mean, there's just a tremendous wealth of information and opportunity there. And frankly, I think ASM Global is going to come out of this stronger than it went into it.
And that's got to be part of that's going to be part of the pitch, right? That's going to be part of the value proposition and it is competitive. And I think there are, again, whether it's older organizations, new organizations, ones that, are fresher to the space, but it's hard to compete with how big you guys are now, right? And to your point, the network, the number of people, and it is global. It's not just using that word. It's very much is global. This isn't just a U.S. based company. I mean, you guys are all over. The knowledge base and the network are two things that's got to be part of the pitch, right? I got to imagine we can tap into anybody for any area of expertise and pretty much have an answer or a solution to X. I mean, that's got to be one of the top things you guys talk about.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to realize the full potential, as our CEO says, of the world's greatest spaces, places, and events, creating just amazing experience for guests, and as I mentioned, offering exciting opportunities for our employees and just the highest value possible for stakeholders. I mean, all of that just got turbocharged when these two companies came together. I just really believe that. I think the level of communication has been fantastic across the globe. It's not always great. The time frames don't always line up. I've been on a number of 2 a.m. Hong Kong calls, but it's exciting learning about new cultures and new ideas, different perspectives. And, you know, hey, we're going to do something in the stadiums here. And you may talk to a stadium in Europe, you know, that says, oh yeah, we tried that. And we know guys here and we know guys there. And, you know, AEG Facilities was probably one of the major players in the whole birth of the MLS. So as MLS expands and, you know, it looks like we'll be playing in Chicago with those guys again at Soldier Field, you know, to just pick up the phone and be able to talk to 3 MLS experts that are now in the family. Yeah. It's priceless.
We talked briefly about your time with the Eagles, and you mentioned the vet in 9/11, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about that in terms of this question, but my mind was going in a few different areas when I thought about this. So, you know, in your time with the Eagles, not only did you open up Lincoln Financial Field, several NFC championship games. We won't talk about the results of those. Several international soccer, countless Army Navy games, NCAA lacrosse, major. I mean, I think you guys opened with 3 or 4 or 5 Bruce Springsteen shows. So just again, major events. And so my mind, I've always been intrigued by what people in your roles do, because I don't think people know the half of it in terms of the challenges that you encounter when it comes to executing a major event, and some of those major events I just mentioned. So talk about that. What are the challenges? What's the biggest challenge that you run into when you run a major event like some of the ones I referenced?
None. No, I'm kidding. You know, somebody equated it once. I wish I could credit the person that told me this, but they said, you know, it's like a duck. He said, when you see that duck going across the water, you know, nice and smooth, and, you know, that's what the guest is supposed to see. But when you look underneath, he's paddling like hell. And that's us. You know, and I'm always reminded of the Woody Allen quote, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But it's a lot of planning. You and I were, wow. You look at the list of people we had an opportunity to work with at the Philadelphia Eagles. You think about the Len Komorowskis, the Scott O'Neills, the Dave Rowans, the Joe Banner, to Don Smolinski, to, you know, there's just so many people that led those organizations that you and I had an opportunity to work for and work with. And so you had a lot of expertise there, and you sit down and, you know, every event to me starts with a plan, and you sit down and say, okay, there are a number of things we have to have, and there's a number of things we'd like to have. Let's set those up, and then let's create our timeline, and let's just build around it. I think it's, you know, it's important that everybody is honest and trusting in each other and communicating, if not over communicating, to ensure success. I think it's important to have a goal and steps to achieving that goal. I think as I progress in my career, I'm recognizing the importance of having flexibility in achieving that goal. You know, as you sit down in this business, especially when it's a visiting entity like Army Navy, where you have, you know, West Point, you have Annapolis, you have the city, you have the team, you know, it's just a lot of different stakeholders. I think it's critical that you realize that there's not, you know, the way to do it. There's just a way, right? There's a number of different ways, right? And if you recognize that yours is a way and not the way, I think it greases the rails to get to success much quicker. So I think the keys to putting on major events like this are, you know, having really good relationships, recognizing we're here to provide the highest quality sports and entertainment experience to whoever's in the building. And that goes for participants, the people promoting the event, the people coming to the event, the people working the event. as long as you view all of those people as stakeholders and people you need to make sure have the highest quality experience, I think you're off to the races. You're in the right place to be successful.
I like what you said a moment ago about it's a plan, it's a way. It doesn't mean to be the plan or the way, and that's what we have going on right now with the pandemic. It's not a snowstorm where you can say, well, we need to have this many people cleaning the parking lots or the seats clean, or if there's a fire, here's what we're going to do when there's a fire. We're going to exit through. This is different. And so you're right. I mean, there's a plan, not the plan, or a way, not the way. So I like.
Yeah, I think it's important to, one other thing I feel like I've learned over time is that, as flat as you can keep the organization is probably a good thing during normal business. I think it's important also to recognize that organization is going to get very hierarchical very quickly when the stuff hits the fan. Everybody's in charge until they have to be in charge. And then all of a sudden, so I think it's important to maintain a certain level of flexibility in that where, hey, let's all contribute to the conversation. Let's all be part of the execution part of the plan. And then if it does, go sideways and something very serious happens like a pandemic, or could be as, isolated as, you're outside at a concert and all of a sudden lightning's coming. You don't have a lot of time to get everyone's input and all that. You hopefully have done that during the planning stages, right? So now when we execute, it's very much a bang, 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 and you can get it done and it's very clear who's in charge. So I do think to be successful in this business is to maintain that level of flexibility, but also challenge your colleagues to be part of the conversation.
I'd like to continue down that path of leadership. And I think that word sometimes, again, kind of, there's other buzzwords in our industry. When you throw around the word leadership, people think about managing people and coaching people. That's not the only thing leadership is, right? It's having influence, making an impact. It's innovating. It's all those things, right? And I think it's critical for organizations like yours, like mine, to do those, right? To innovate and to make an impact. How have you, during this time, right? You as a leader, because you've built up enough cachet, I think, in this industry where people look to you and say, I respect this guy's opinion, or respect what he has to say. So as a leader, how have you maybe changed things up or evolved over the last, let's call it 6 weeks, 2 months, where you weren't just always status quo? You've had to, have an influence, make an impact, go to senior leadership and say, we should do this, or we should consider that. Like, how have you changed as a leader during the last couple of months?
I recently read an article it was about empowerment leadership. And I've really I think we all evolve our leadership. If you don't, I think you're going to get stale very quickly, and, you're not as impactful as you might be as a leader. I think, to be a good leader, especially in this time, Mark, I have kind of looked inward first to make sure I'm the best team player, colleague I can be, and providing value to my team or the team that I've been assigned to. That's the first step, right? Am I organized in the new normal that we're all living in, right? In our houses, when, you have kids, I have kids, how do I deal with the 8-year-old coming running in, or you get up in the morning and you take your shower, you get dressed, you go to work, but that just happens to be in the bedroom in the back. But, getting yourself right to be the best you can be for your team. So that was the first thing I did during this, because I found myself missing things or forgetting things because I just didn't have my infrastructure, right, that we all have set up at work. So that was the first thing. The second thing was increasing the cadence of communication. I wanted to make sure, at least in the role I'm in, my primary goal is to make sure my team has what they need to succeed in the field. The resources, the communication, the information, whatever it is, that help on a decision. So I really view it as focusing on that. Do they have the information they need? Every once in a while, I'll send an article, have a Teams call, and let's just communicate what's going on. With the recent news of the NFL season coming up, hey, let's have a call with all of our stadiums. When you have 7 stadiums, NFL stadiums, you can come together and just have a communication. Now, it might be we're all saying, I don't know, but you know what? You've taken 30 minutes, 50 minutes to be together on a video call, share ideas, be with colleagues. And, oh, by the way, I'm dealing with this challenge. Or one of the things we're doing in a lot of our buildings that are now dark, we're getting some of that work done that like to haves done,
Yeah.
do we paint this? Do we fix that? So people just looking for information on that, just the sharing of ideas and perspectives on things has been incredibly helpful. But for me, I, as I progress through this thing, think leadership is less about the leader and more about what the leader leaves behind. And, the ultimate test is if you're removed from the situation completely, how does the organization still run? And are the things that were put in place during your leadership still productive and useful to the team? So I have flipped it from, what am I doing for them, directing and my opinion and all that. It's more changed to asking questions, getting their perspectives, and then providing insights where needed. I like to make sure everybody's in the conversation, and then when they need my input, I make sure to give it. So I've changed, I guess, the method by which I approach a challenge from a leadership standpoint.
You mentioned a lot of, you said sharing articles here and there, and just a moment ago you talked about kind of figuring out how to navigate the balance with family and kids and going to your home office somewhere else in your home where they might not be. But as part of that, you and I have talked about this over the years too, and I think we're similar in that we will get bored if we don't read more articles or listen to more podcasts. We need to kind of continue on that path. So I guess the last question on my side is listen. Yeah, we've had a little bit more time over the last 6 weeks. I won't say we're still working. We're all still working. We're working from home, but this isn't vacation. So we also want to learn and grow, though, right? We want to evolve in some way. What have you been doing to continue to learn? You're reading more. How are you balancing maybe that I'm doing my day-to-day job and also I need to kind of read more, learn more, whatever it is. What have you been doing?
So I'm really glad you asked that question. It's been one of the aha moments for me during this time of I've always wanted to do. So I feel like I've picked up 2 hours in my day. Some people say you only have so much time. I feel like I've actually added 2 hours, and that's the commute, right? And what I've decided to do with those 2 hours is on the front end, I use that time for my morning reading. I've picked 3 or 4 publications, some of our industry publications, the sports businesses in the world, Stadia, all those, kind of reading those, but also some of the, I really enjoy the business review kind of publications where there's some, Harvard Business Review or Penn has one on leadership, and Adam Grant and Mike Useem and all these guys. They're just great thought leaders in that space. And so, Mark, what I've done is I've decided, hey, in the morning, I'm gonna really dedicate to just an article in each of those buckets. And podcasts have been great, by the way. I've got a couple I listen to, and on the weekends, I've really enjoyed listening to a few. Adam Grant's Work Life has been fantastic. It really is for anybody that's looking for one to add to their mix from a work standpoint. That's a real good one. Really gets you thinking about different things and how to make work the best possible experience it can be. And even some of our publications have gone to an audio stream of a summary, which has been good to just start your day off with just some industry information. And then you jump into the day-to-day, because the day-to-day stuff's always going to be there. Yeah, and that's the have to do, right? The old Covey triangle or the quadrants. The have to do's are always going to be there. It's the like to do's, or as Steve McClatchy says, the game tasks, right? I should work out. I should read more. I should, so I think it's important that we carve that time out. And that's what I've done. And on the back end of the day, I've tried to do more physical stuff where get a quick workout in, or just get out and walk with the family or something like that. So those are two things I think you bring it up, right? You want to be the best in every role you play, right? And I think challenge yourself, growing yourself, and just being more informed about some of the cutting edge thoughts as it relates to leadership, management, just being a good colleague, being up to date on our industry. And God knows today, things change minute to minute. So it's important, I think, to read. And by the way, be aware of what you're reading, because there's a lot of stuff out there that just, to me, isn't worth the screen time it's on, but there are a lot of things out there that are really good, written by some really smart folks.
Well, I love how you're balancing. You're adding 2 more hours to the day, and you and I are in agreement there. So it's good that we're adding time, not subtracting time.
As long as I'm not shoving cupcakes in my mouth during those 2 hours, I'll be fine.
Well, listen, I know you have a lot on your plate. Obviously, like you said, the day-to-day doesn't go anywhere. So I know you're busy. Thank you very much for your time. Just tremendous conversation. I love hearing, again, not just philosophical, but the experiences you've had in this 20-plus year career. It's good for people to hear, again, whether it be the team side, which, again, everybody loves and aspires to be, but people don't know enough about the world that you're in right now. And I always love educating them on, again, prior SMG, but now the merged company. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Leonard.
Thanks for the opportunity, Mark. I really appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Thank you.